if we want to revolutionize science, what we need to do is not science education, and science is not put it on the internet, like having some videos or whatever, making things like that instead of like in the classrooms is not revolutionizing education. It's not a fundamental. Revolutionizing in some ways, just like the printing press helped revolutionize publishing in some ways. Instead of having to handwrite it, made things more accessible. But it's a superficial thing. It's not fundamental about education. Education is not publishing. The printing press revolutionized printing and spreading things. It did not revolutionize any subject in and of itself. It's not a revolution in philosophy. It's not a revolution in math. It's not a revolution in physics. It's not a revolution in psychology. Same thing. We can do this nice technological stuff, but that does not revolutionize education. Education is fundamentally about training the youth for adult life, and having a bunch of videos doesn't revolutionize that. What we should do to revolutionize and make better, improve training the youth is to bring in wisdom and get rid of this nonsense about isolating things, teaching things in isolation, memorization. People they've asked for decades. It's a cliche. When are we ever going to use this? When the hell is that going to be answered and taken seriously? What business does that? None. Education is about training the youth for adult life, which means having things that are relevant. We need to be philosophical in education and science to do this. That's one thing that Galileo himself did. In the book Galileo Galilei, When the World Stood Still by L.A. Ness, quote, Galileo's radical renewal, unquote, in science. He figured out how it should really be done. Radical, at root. Not like radicalist. Some people think like some like crazy person that goes around yelling. Radical in this sense means getting to the root, basic fundamentals of something. So quote, and it's like unquote, like what science is. It's like getting it right. Not this Platonic nonsense. Quote, Galileo's radical renewal sprang, nevertheless, from the Aristotelian mindset, as it was taught at the Jesuits Collegio Romano. Human reason has a basic ability to recognize and understand the objects registered by these senses. The objects are real. They have properties that can be perceived and then further processed according to logical rules. These logical concepts are also real, if not in exactly the same way as the physical objects, unquote. Galileo himself, in the second letter of Galileo Galilei to Mark Welser on sunspots, page 18 of Discoveries and Opinions of Galileo, translated by Stillman Drake, 1957. Again, I'll put, as I usually say, I'll put links to these. I'll put these quotes in the description field. So Galileo, talking to the scholastics. Remember at the time, people thought things went around the earth. It seemed that way. It looks like the sun goes around the earth. And if the earth was going around the sun, why don't we feel the wind? These questions had to be answered. These people were not stupid. They were very smart. It's some people nowadays are very uninformed when they look back and laugh at what ancient people believed, because these people today cannot even prove that the earth goes around the sun. They have zero understanding of developing the idea step by step from the evidence of the senses. It's just memorized stuff. Just like any other like little social clique thing that people just say and don't understand. It makes them part of the group. It's sad. It's not their fault. It's a failure on the part of, like a systemic thing again. Education, the culture, some bad philosophy coming into play, things like that. We need to fix. We need to get out of our unknown unknowns, learn this and fix it, please, for the love of life. We all make mistakes. We have things to learn. Let's recognize our mistake and fix it. But back then, Galileo's time, they thought, or before, people thought the sun and everything went around the earth. Again, they had reason for it. You got to look at the arguments, see what was going on to really understand it, see how it makes sense. Wrong, but they had insufficient experience and evidence and reasoning to really figure out what was going on. It took a while. But, and then people thought also that things in the heavens did not change. Things on earth would grow and decay. Things would come into being and go out. Things would move in like straight lines or jig-jags and stuff. But in the heavens, it seems like everything goes in circles. It's like eternal. You look at all these records going back centuries and millennia, and same thing in pretty much the same place with these like circular motions going on that repeat on themselves. That's kind of what they were able to do with the measurements they had at the time and stuff, technology. And again, people needed to identify the proper contexts, bigger picture context, more information to get things right, and get some good reasoning skills. But so they thought things in the heavens didn't change. The celestial was inalterable. It did not change. Things on earth changed. So here, and like some scholastics believe that, they studied Aristotle but did not get him. Because they were following authority. They did not get what Aristotle said, fundamentally, in principle. They could memorize some of what he said, but did not practice what Aristotle preached. So, Galileo, responding to some critics, some scholastic critics who were saying Galileo was wrong, because it says here in Aristotle. And again, it's not Aristotle's fault. Some people want to like jump on Aristotle. It's so dumb. Everybody believed that back at the time. Get over it. It's not like Aristotle like made everyone do this. He wasn't even a major physicist anyway. His thing was philosophy, wisdom, biology. Those are more areas where he was serious about. We don't know. We can't go back and ask him, but from his writings and interest in spending how much time he spent on things, from what I'm aware of, like biology and astronomy wasn't like some big interest. He even said to some Platonists that they had their head up in the stars too much. They need to look at these things that are more common but more beautiful. Dig into biology. That even comes up in some of his writings. So Galileo says, arguing against some of the scholastics who are criticizing him for what he's saying about the solar system and physics, quote, I should even think that in making the celestial material alterable, I contradict the doctrine of Aristotle much less than do those people who still want to keep the sky inalterable. For I am sure that he never took its inalterability to be as certain as the fact that all human reasoning must be placed second to direct experience. So Galileo is saying he's more consistent with Aristotle. He understands him better. He follows the principles of Aristotle's better, the philosophy. These other people don't. Because Galileo knows that all human reasoning must be placed second to direct experience. That's a fundamental. You don't take some made-up ideas and dismiss experience, as the Platonists would say. Experience, evidence of the senses comes first. Human reasoning second. There's some philosophy. So, in contrast, and people can dig into what Galileo did, and I recommend it. Look at his actual experiments. Read some of the 2 New Sciences. Read some of this. The Discoveries and Opinions of Galileo. It should be read in schools. Some of it's accessible. He's got some good writing in there. People can dig into some of that. No excuses. So, in contrast, when you get some nonsense, some pseudoscience, when people are lost in math, lost in words, then they do nonsense like this. Here's something that's more Platonic. It is not committed to the evidence of the senses, to experience, as Galileo was, and tried to be as much as he could. He made some mistakes. No one's like omniscient or perfect. So, this is from some article I will link to in the description, if I remember, hopefully. So there's a quote within a quote here. I'll say quote and then internal quote and then undo internal quote and stuff like that, even though it might seem contorted. But then you can read it. You can read along, look at it later. So, quote, Galileo claimed to have seen moons around the planet Jupiter. Another scholar, Francesco Sizzi, attempted to refute Galileo, not with observations, but with the following argument. Internal quote. There are 7 windows in the head, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, 2 eyes, and a mouth. So in the heavens, there are 2 favorable stars, 2 unpropitious, 2 luminaries, and Mercury alone undecided and indifferent, from which, and many other similar phenomena of nature, such as these 7 metals, etc., which it were tedious to enumerate, we gather that the number of planets is necessarily 7. Ancient nations, as well as modern Europeans, have adopted the division of the week into 7 days, and have named them from the 7 planets. Now if we increase the number of planets, this whole system falls to the ground. Oh my God. Moreover, these satellites are invisible to the naked eye, and therefore can have no influence on the Earth, and therefore would be useless, and therefore do not exist. Ha! What a joke! Okay. Unquote, unquote. There's like kind of stuff kids learn in school. Please, scientists, teachers, stop doing that. Have them memorize. Dig into the evidence of the senses so they learn real science. There's different ways we can think about what science is. So, science. I had to check my calendar for something, sorry. Make sure I'm remembering my time schedule right. But science, in one way, is like the ideas and products of science. That's one kind of sense or meaning of the concept. It can mean the scientific community. But fundamentally, science is a method. It's a method for figuring out what the truth is in certain contexts, especially. Because we got science in general, but usually people just know one science or a little part of it. Physics, chemistry, psychology, whatever. Each one studies certain things in the world. Certain things and attributes and activities and actions, and uses methods to do so. The methods and objects of study of physics is not the same thing as the methods and objects of study of psychology. Not the same. They both involve mental processing of things in the world. That's what it is to be objective, properly speaking. A commitment to the facts, following certain methods. It's not merely a commitment to the facts. We got to take into account the nature of human consciousness and how we think logically also. There's different methods and different things. We got physics, chemistry, mathematics, philosophy, psychology, sociology, history, anthropology, economics, different sciences. They're all basically rational. There are things in the world being studied by reason. Then there's these individual differences for each one. Logic, reasoning applies to every one. Cause-effect relationships. Basically, science is the understanding. It's like the systematic understanding of the nature of things and their cause-effect relationships. That's in general. Then we got the different ones. But that 7 stuff, that is like a joke. What the heck is that? But that's kind of like the way some people do word problems in math, unfortunately, or the way they do some physics. No connection to reality. Please, for the love of life, for the love of the helping each individual student be their best, as the commercial used to say, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. Let's not waste a mind or waste a life. Let's help people be committed to reality and committed to the truth. We need a good philosophy in this stuff to have science done right. Galileo helped get rid of this stuff, which was kind of done before. Oh, a circle is a perfect thing, and things in the heavens don't change, so they must go in circles. Wrong. Kepler helped get science right because, well, he was kind of like scientifically schizophrenic, not as a person, but part Platonist and part Aristotelian. In some ways, he'd just make things up like this. In some ways, he was very rigorous and would stick to the evidence of the senses. And so he discovered that planets go in elliptical orbits, which no one else had, not circles, ellipses, because that's what the facts and the evidence say. It's not because things go like they're eternal and they must be perfect. Wrong. That's like the seventh thing. Students should learn not some arbitrary ideas. If they're doing it like that and not learning what the method of science, they're not learning science. It's fake. It's not right. Students deserve better. And you got to learn too. I didn't know all this right away. It's not obvious. It's not like, oh, this is what science is, obviously. I have a lot to learn, hell of a lot, as we do all. So much that won't even be answered in our lifetimes that I can't even study. We're limited by time, effort, what we can dig into that's even known at the time. But thank goodness I've studied from some other people, studied what they said about science, and learned a lot about what it really is and how it's done. Help get this Platonic nonsense and these John Dewey nonsense and nonsense from Popper and Kuhn. Popper and Kuhn, too influenced by Plato and Kant and others. Failing to see what Aristotle and Galileo and Newton identified and discovered to help make science better. They're, Popper, Kuhn, more corrupting influences nowadays. But that's the thing we need. What Galileo was saying. So, and here, take, for example, many people who would agree. E. Bright Wilson, professor of chemistry at Harvard. I'll put a link to him. I think he trained some Nobel Prize winners. He won a bunch of awards. As he says about so-called modern philosophy versus real philosophy, quote, practical scientists who rationally allow themselves to listen to philosophers, unquote, modern pseudo-philosophers where it's not philosophy anymore. Quote, practical scientists who rationally allow themselves to listen to philosophers are likely to go away in a discouraged frame of mind, convinced that there is no logical foundation for the things they do, that all their alleged scientific laws are without justification, and that they are living in a world of naive illusion. Of course, once they get out into the sunlight again, they know that this is not so, that scientific principles do work, bridges stay up, eclipses occur on schedule, and bombs go off. Nevertheless, it is very unsatisfactory that no generally acceptable theory of scientific inference has yet been put forward. Mistakes are often made which would presumably not have been made if a consistent and satisfactory basic philosophy had been followed, unquote. And others agree. Albert Einstein, in a letter to Robert Thornton, who was a professor of physics at the University of Puerto Rico, this letter is December 1944, quote, okay, again, this is Einstein writing to Thornton, agreeing with Thornton. Thornton would wrote, okay, it says, Thornton had written to Einstein on persuading colleagues of the importance of philosophy of science to scientists in science. Okay, so Einstein writing to Thornton, quote, I fully agree with you about the significance and educational value of methodology as well as history and philosophy of science, unquote. Okay, let's read that again. Think about that. Quote, I fully agree with you about the significance and educational value of methodology as well as history and philosophy of science. So many people today, and even professional scientists, seem to me like someone who has seen thousands of trees but has never seen a forest. A knowledge of the historic and philosophical background gives that kind of independence from prejudices of his generation, from which most scientists are suffering. This independence created by philosophical insight is, in my opinion, the mark of distinction between a mere artisan or specialist and a real seeker after truth. Unquote. Oh, and so maybe things have changed and things are better? Not. Okay. David Epstein, in his book Range, How Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World, a bestseller, a really good book I recommend people read. I'll have to do like a review of that sometime. Quote, science students learned the facts of their specific field without understanding how science should work in order to draw true conclusions. Unquote. Again, he's focusing on method. Science can be thought of as the products and ideas of science, as the scientific community. But no, the fundamental thing is it's about a method. The scientific community is sometimes it can be wrong, and history shows it. Like Ohm's law, he was ridiculed by the German scientific establishment because they didn't need to experiment. You have all these intellectuals that are great, regarded as great in their fields and maybe PhDs, and they're dismissing him because he experimented. They don't know what the hell science is. Or Semmelweis learned that doctors should wash their hands before they go into surgery, and it cut down on disease. Again, these doofuses said, oh, we're doctors. How dare you say we're dirty? We're clean. And they ridiculed him. Sorry, science is a method. It's not a community. The fundamental thing is method. We need to get method for the love of life, please. In education, in thinking. That's more important. That's the most important thing, not memorizing a bunch of things and regurgitating. Teach a love of wisdom, a commitment to the truth. That's what it should be, please. Or here, Range again. Quote, part of the problem, Arturo Casadevall argued, is that young scientists are rushed to specialize before they learn how to think. They end up unable to produce good work themselves and unequipped to spot bad or fraudulent work by their colleagues, unquote. And that's a recent book, too. It's not like it was written in 1720 or something, 2019 or something like that. And then here's from an article from Johns Hopkins, Revolutionizing with R3, a new PhD program seeks to train scientists as critical thinkers. So that Arturo Casadevall, PhD at Hopkins, and Gunda Labash, PhD, started a program, R3. It's called RISE now, but RISE. But, quote from this article, quote, but educators at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health assert that memorization alone does not a scientist make, unquote. We need to think about that. What are we really doing with our students? Are we having them memorize, or are we using what we're doing to teach them to think and to be committed to the truth and know what science really is? Do we stop and discuss Galileo and method to give a broader perspective on what's going on? Or are we failing in doing kind of what Einstein was saying about a lot of people can see some trees, but they never see the forest? You know, and again, it's like something we might not have thought about. We just got to learn. I make mistakes too. Everyone makes mistakes. We just got to learn from them, dig into things we don't know or things we don't even know we don't know, get wisdom into play, think about human life and reality and good philosophy, and start doing better. You know, we all have to keep doing that through life. It's a constant thing, never ending. We all make mistakes and learn. We know some things for sure, for solid, for good. And we just got to learn more, correct mistakes, so on. But let's do this, please. Let's not work on memorization. Ditch that, and let's really revolutionize science education. So, quote, but educators at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health assert that memorization alone does not a scientist make. Above all, most importantly, fundamentally, more than memorization, above all. Okay, so that was a little bit of my addition to that. So, quote, above all, students must be critical, creative thinkers who are honest and responsible with data. In order to train scientists as critical thinkers, the R3 Graduate Science Initiative was recently created in the Department of Molecular Biology and Immunology, led by Director Gundula Bosch, PhD. More recently, Bosch's training as an educator showed her the importance of critical thinking, a skill she realized is rarely formally taught, unquote. Yes, and whose fault is that? It's systemic. We don't all know better. I sure didn't. We just got to learn, make the change, please, for the love of life, for the love of the students we're teaching. Commitment to doing things we can, the best we can. And there's more. I'll put some more quotes I'll put in the show description field about that. But we need to fix that. That's how we can revolutionize science education and education. Not in terms of putting same old stuff on video or in books or whatever, or adding little like flashing lights and fun to it or whatever. Ooh, I need to focus my camera. I forgot to do that. Okay, there, it's in focus. Automatic doesn't work very well. But E.O. Wilson, in his book Consilience, Unity of Knowledge, good book, says, quote, few scientists are philosophers. Most are intellectual journeymen, exploring locally, hoping for a strike, living for the present, unquote. And so are most engineers and most teachers, because of the way we're trained and stuff like that. We need to revolutionize that. We should choose to, for the love of life, for the commitment to the people we are charged to help out and take care of, to make a better world, help the youth out. We should work on philosophy and good philosophy, not the trash that says like there's 7 holes in the head, therefore there have to be 7 planets, and it's impossible to be more than 7. It's like cray-cray. It's not a commitment to reality. Or like Ptolemy and others thought everything would be in circles. Then Ptolemy has all this contorted thinking. The math was amazing. The stuff he did, just genius intellectually, but just out of touch with the world. It was a computing machine, but it wasn't astronomy, and it wasn't based on causes. Hence, Kepler called one of his works a new astronomy. A new astronomy based on causes, not based on mathematical nonsense, not lost in math. An astronomy based on causes. That's what we need. We need to be like that and not have, like Ptolemy, circles going on empty circles, going on nothingness, circles upon circles upon circles. Stick the planet where it is, identify reality, know the nature of the thing and its cause-effect relationships. There's science. There's the method. The method would be induction and concept formation. We need to dig into how that's really done, not some nonsense about it. But instead of few teachers or philosophers, most are intellectual journeymen, exploring locally, hoping for a strike, living for the present. We need to help bring philosophy back into play, know that it's important, help teach it. Because, we don't always know that. We didn't stop to think about it. Not all of us are a philosopher. We need to learn from the good ones, take that into our thinking so we can do better at work and everything. Because we have these unknown unknowns. We don't know everything. Plus, hell, some people, you got some people are teaching and coaching and they have a family. How the hell are they going to have time to dig into this? It needs to be part of teacher training and stuff. Or heck, even if you're just not coaching, you're teaching and you got a family at home, you ain't got time to dig in a bunch of this stuff. Some of this stuff needs to be done in teacher training and in workshops. More times it needs to be taken to help train teachers and help them out and not force them to do a bunch of stuff without enough rest or health considerations or time to think. You know, if we want to do a better job at education and want the youth to be more successful, we care about the youth and our children, then we need to help those who are taking care of it. I mean, kind of obviously, but we don't always know what to do about it. Got the heart in the right place. We just need to learn some methods, some ideas that philosophy is important, that some philosophy is wrong and errant and some is good. And that's why we're here, to help each other out. So let's please do that to make science education and education better. Let's please, for the love of life, do what Aristotle and Galileo did. Get all human reasoning placed second to direct experience. Experience first, primary, the evidence of the senses. Reasoning must conform to that, what we know about the world. Then we got to learn some basic logic, not just like deductive stuff. We need to be independent thinkers. That's what we need to teach students to do. Deduction, you can't do that until you got concepts and generalizations already. Then you're like already out of touch a little bit. Deduction's important, but we must get concept formation. How do we form a concept that's in logic? It needs to be brought back. Induction. How does induction really work? Again, not like what Wilson said. You go talk to some modern so-called philosophers, and they give you nonsense about induction. And then you go back into the real world and you see we're inducing all the time and it's fine and we do it right. You got to learn the logic of it so you know when it's right, when it's wrong. When is a concept good? When is it invalid? How do we form real, true concepts? What are good inductions? Where does induction go wrong? Classification, definition, things like that. When we get that stuff, when we know that the world is knowable, then we can really revolutionize science education. So let's do that, please. Let's get it. If you want some help, I would love to help. I know people I could recommend too. I would love to teach students, train them, help them be better prepared, just like Gunda Labash and others are doing. I can help a scientist be a lot better than they ever would have been. Someone who wants to be in science or teaching, work with schools, consult with schools, train teachers. For the love of life, I'd like to do that. So if you want some help, just contact me, please. Let's get out there, dig into good philosophy, make the world a better place, and really help out the youth that we care so much about. Peace. Thank you.